Mama, is God real?
Is marriage for life?
Do we have to be baptized?
Is drinking really wrong?
Well, that's your interpretation.
Where do I come from?
Do we really have to have authority for what we do?
Where is God when I need Him?
Rise up, O men of God. His kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and in the night of wrong.
Hello, friends, and welcome again to the Shield of Faith, a program that is dedicated to discussing spiritual things and giving you Bible answers. My name is Wes Garland, and I preach for the Northwest Church of Christ in Clay County, Tennessee. And alongside with us, as always, Scott Gann.
Hey, Wes.
He is the preacher for the Philippi Church of Christ in Tompkinsville, Kentucky. And we also have with us Eric Pitcock.
Hey, Wes.
He is the preacher at the Gamaliel Church of Christ in Gamaliel, Kentucky. But today, friends, we're going to be discussing the subject of dancing. And guys, whenever you really look around about us in the world, we find dancing that is all around us, isn't it?
Yes, we do.
It's all around our TVs.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard to find even
been
on television.
popularized now.
Exactly.
So many shows are coming out, so you think you can dance, and all those dance shows, it's really popular right now.
Oh, yeah.
All those workout videos that you're seeing today, it's all about the dance.
You've got public advertisement of these things. You also have them even dealing with their own jobs. Have you ever all heard of job banquets that people go to? And they drink and they dance and do all these other things. We also even have it all around our schools. We have school dances. We've got proms. We've got dance teams, cheerleadings, and just etc. But whenever we really are thinking about the subject of dancing, I want to ask a question. Basically, is dancing something, guys, that is sinful in nature, or are there certain type of dances that are sinful and then there's some that are not? What do y'all think about that?
Well, dancing in and of itself is wrong. I mean, when we think of the definition of dancing, we're thinking of rhythmic movements, usually involving music. And you know, there are examples in the Bible where people danced, but it was wrong. When we go, like for example, in Job 21, 11 through 12, we see that the children danced, and this will be equal to that of the as we sing in Vacation Bible Schools. We sing the song "I'm in the Lord's Army," you know, and we do the little jingle, and we do the movements and the acting it out and so forth, and that's a type of dance. But that isn't necessarily, that's not wrong. And then we see, you know, when I was a little boy and I was in school, we sung the song "I'm a Little Teapot." You know, short and stout. Here's my handle, and here's my spout. You know, we used to sing that song, and that was a type of dance. But there wasn't anything wrong with that. And then we see, you know, and we find these examples. You know, like for example in Job 21, 11, and 12, and you know, in the book of 2 Samuel, and 2 Samuel chapter 6. In verse number 12, we see there that there's another example of dancing, and if one of you guys get there, you can read it. But 2 Samuel chapter 6, in verse number 12, and it says there,
Now it was told King David, saying, The Lord has blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all the belongings to him because of the ark of God. And so David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with gladness.
Okay. Now go on down to verse number 14. As we see, they brought this ark of the covenant back. Now verse number 14. Then David danced before the Lord. You know, he was just, you know, it was just a rhythmic movement type of dance. It wasn't necessarily anything wrong with that. Just like there isn't necessarily anything wrong with doing, you know, the song "I'm in the Lord's Army" and so forth. So, you know, we understand that there's a type of dance that it would be considered okay because there's nothing in and of itself that's wrong. But then there are certain principles that when we apply to dancing, and when we look at the Bible as a whole, when we start looking at just what type of dance that we're doing, then we can certainly see that there is a dance that would be wrong and that would be sinful. Like, for example, the dances that we see going on in a lot of the dance clubs and a lot of the dance videos, and like the shows that we see on TV and the television shows. And so, you know, what we would need to do is understand that there's a difference in the two. And that there are principles that makes one dance wrong and the other dance okay.
Well, there's a difference between David dancing. Leaping for joy is the dance that he did.
Well,
and there's a
whenever
difference between that type of dance and the modern day dance that
That's right.
we're going to look at today and see if this modern day dance is sin or is it not.
Well, the reason why 2 Samuel 6, verse 14 is not a sinful type dance is because they had just been given back the Ark of the Covenant. And so they were leaping for joy, they were
right.
celebrating.
That was a time of
and
rejoicing.
that was a time of just
That's right.
happiness and rejoicing.
That's right. And then also that type of dance doesn't have included and incorporated within it the same activities that would be the same activities that and characteristics that would make the modern type dance that we see today wrong.
Right.
And like for example, like what we see in bars and we see in like for example the things that goes on at the prom and so forth. And so there is a dancing that's bad, and we see an example of a dance that's bad, like in Mark chapter 6, verse number 18. You remember there that John the Baptist, he leveled the charge against Herod.
Absolutely.
And Herod had another man's wife. He had Philip's wife. And Herod was called out on the carpet for that by John. And, we see Herodias, she didn't like that. And so Herod's wife, she didn't like that. And so what she did, she had Salome, her daughter, what she did, she went and she danced erotically in front of Herod and enticed him in order to get John the Baptist's head on a platter.
Right.
So,
he made that vow.
That's right.
She enticed him so much that he says, whatever, I'll give you half of my kingdom. He says, whatever you want, I will give.
Yeah.
And so she enticed him
That's
to
right.
the point that he lost his faculties.
Well-
And he really didn't want to kill. He didn't really want to behead John the Baptist. He didn't want to do that.
didn't.
But because of this
Because of the
emotional,
enticement. That's right.
enticing
The lust
dance
and all
and the
those
lust
things.
he had
That's
between
right.
her is what caused him to basically lose his mind
Yeah.
for that
and
moment.
And for him to change his mind and for him to go in a different direction other than what he wanted to do, that tells me that dance was a very powerful dance.
Yes.
That was a dance that had a lot of influence on his mind. Him being a male and her being a female, and the type of movements that she would have been exerting as she made that dance in front of him. It was a very enticing and a very moving type dance for him to be able to change his mind and to kill a man as a result of her dancing in front of him.
Well, you can get all of this in just verse 22 of Mark chapter 6. It says, and when Herodias' daughter herself came in and danced and pleased Herod.
Yeah, and please him.
And notice this, and those who sat with him, the king said to the girl, ask me whatever you want, and I will give it to you.
Yeah, we have different accounts. We also have that account in Luke verses 3:19 and also in Matthew 14 that we take all those together and that's where we get the account where he says that I'll give you half of my kingdom. That's how much that this enticed him. So it's amazing this movement that she was doing and how that moved him, like you said, to do something he would not normally do.
That's right.
And I think that's the power. And to be honest with you, I believe, is the modern day dance of today.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
It's the dance
That's right.
that you see in the clubs
The
today.
The modern type dance that we see today is like you said, is like that dance that Salome done in front of Herod. It is a very provocative, it is a very lustful type of dance that is being done, and just about everywhere you turn, and even the popular television shows that we see today, that's the type of dance that's being promoted. When we see, we may address this in this later on in this segment as we think about the prom, and that's the type of dance that's going on there, and these spring flings and all this kind of thing that our schools put on. This is the type of dance. It is a provocative type of dance, and so that's what makes it simple.
Right.
And there are certain principles that makes it simple.
Well, something that I really want to bring out and even ask our audience that's watching this, whenever you really think about the modern day dance, let's think about these different types of purposes of this type of dance. This is just the way in which the world sees this. It is something in which men like to see women do.
Yes.
I mean, whenever you think about it,
That's right.
there's nothing ever better that stimulates the man than having a woman moving in lustful ways, right?
Yes.
It's something in which just starts, it is something that gets the emotions rolling. It is something that brings about the sexual thoughts. And it is something that gives us the opportunity to get closer to the man or woman in whom we are with.
That's right. And the
Now,
women
that's-
too. I mean,
that's the purpose.
it's not only to the man; it's to the woman also.
Exactly.
Because they're stimulated in the same way with this enticing type dance.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The modern dance that we see today is enrooted and grounded and engrafted completely and saturated completely in a sexual
Absolutely.
connotation. I mean,
That's what it's
all
all
the
about.
all the new dances
That's
that
right.
you hear about that's coming out,
Yeah.
you hear the names of those dances, and you know
Yeah.
that if the name's not good, the dance is surely not going
Right.
to be good either.
Yeah. That's
and
right.
we have that
And I believe
plastered everywhere
Yeah.
for everybody to see.
and that's the appeal, Scott. I mean,
Right.
that's the appeal. That's what
Well-
that's why it draws people. You know,
Right.
sin in and of itself is enticing, and it draws people, and it's able to get its fingers around us and grab a hold of us, and so it is enticing. And I believe one of the appeals to it is the lustful type of desires that results from it. You just think, Wes, you just think of the power of a touch. And how powerful that is. And you think, what are we doing when the modern dance is going on today? Well, they're touching folks. People are touching folks. And, usually you have a man and a woman that are not married, and they're in close proximity. They're touching one another, and it creates inside of us.
It leads to other things, doesn't it?
That's right. It sure does.
Right.
It surely
And we
does.
see one thing I want us to think about too. We did do a lesson on immodesty, and I think that's it's taken over. But you also see at beaches and things like this, you see these parties were going on, and you got these naked, basically, as the Bible would tell it, ladies and guys. And what are they doing? They're dancing.
That's right.
They're dancing, and that just increases the enticement and the lust. We see that on all beaches and things like that. You can, it's going on like crazy. I mean, it's really basically the root of all these things that we're going to be looking at on these moral issues. But the Bible still teaches us. Teaches us in 1 Thessalonians 5:22, we're to abstain from every appearance of evil. If it looks evil, and if it's going to draw us away, in James 1 there, he tells us, he says in 14 through 15, it says, but each one is tempted, see, when he is drawn away, and each one is tempted when he is drawn by his own desires and enticed. See, that's what we're talking about. This enticing dance that we're talking about. It entices a person to do something that they wouldn't normally do. A person like Herod, he wouldn't have normally done that. And most men today wouldn't normally do those things that they're going to do unless it's placed in this realm of dancing and touching, like you said, the power of touch. Also, and when desire has conceived, or when lust has conceived, it brings the birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, it brings forth death. So we see those things. We see the process of it. And most things stem from each other. And we'll look at some of that. Hopefully when we get to the problem, we'll get some statistics on that and see how they work out and how one sin leads to another. We're not unto our own, as we say. If we're doing something, usually that leads up to something else. Sin leads to sin, leads to sin, leads to sin, and it's just an ongoing cycle.
It amazes me how naive people are, to subjects like this, and I believe they really do think that there's something not exactly right about it.
Right.
But they still want to be naive, and they still want to try to pass it by as something that's being okay and acceptable. But listen, I mean, you've got all the ingredients that are there to create just chaos in the life of a Christian, and to create situations that are just going to give you problems and are just going to just create, like you said, lead into more and more sin. You've got individuals that are in close proximity to one another, and they're grinding on one another and gyrating up against one another, and you have and you just think that's another point, the music that's involved, the music that's involved as they dance, and some of the lyrics that are in those songs. I mean, it's just it's detestable to the Lord to
It
think
is.
about some of the things that's talked about in those songs. I believe you've got some of the names of these songs.
Well, I basically did some research, and I was just looking at in dealing with prom, in just some of the top 20 songs that are actually being played there for 2010, there for the prom. Just some of these are Single Ladies from Beyonce. And whenever you really look into the lyrics of that, the lyrics itself are very
Provocative.
provocative.
Probably don't need to say them.
I mean, just some of the things in which she says in this. Cause another brother notice me, I'm up on him, he up on me. You also have, I got gloss on my lips, a man on my hips, got me tighter than my Dyrian jeans, acting up, drinking my cup, I could care less what you think, I need no permission, did I mention? So if this type of music is being played,
That's the number one
that's the
prom
number
song.
one prom
Yeah.
song.
Yeah. Not to mention,
Right.
there are countless others.
Right.
Countless others.
Anytime you couple
That's right.
music with the modern dance, you know, that makes this dance appeal that much stronger.
Yes.
You're dancing to the music, you're listening to music.
Listen to the lyrics.
Most of the younger adults and most of the older adults that goes to these clubs and things where sin goes on is running rampant. They know the lyrics to these songs. They're singing these songs while they're dancing.
Just think about this. Good girls go bad. And in that whole song is talking about how I make good girls go bad, saying, listen, it's just innocent. One time ain't going to be nothing, and everything like that. That type of lyrics also, I got a feeling, some of the lyrics in that song from the Black Eyed Peas are just provocative. Use somebody, what do you think that means?
Well,
That whole song is about saying, listen, I'm lonely, I could use somebody. And it's all about in the sexual sense.
yes.
So if they're dancing to these type of lyrics and they really are really thinking about the lyrics, they're going to be doing some movements that are going to be going along
That's right.
with these dances.
Yeah. And parents, you know, they ought to have, they ought to want to be interested in understanding,
That's right.
you know, the things that's going on.
That's right.
Right.
And understand that these things are being done, and that there's nothing innocent about it.
No, there's
You know,
not.
there's
nothing at all
there's
innocent
nothing
about
at
it.
all innocent about
You
their
know,
children going to these places.
We can deceive ourselves.
That's
and
right.
the Bible talks about that
Yeah.
throughout, that we can deceive ourselves. And a lot of parents are they
They're
deceive
deceived.
their own.
They
They
deceive
are
themselves. That's
deceived.
right.
And,
That's
and,
right.
and younger people, they know how to deceive mom and dad into allowing
Sometimes
them
they
to
can
do
be
that.
masterminds in how
Right.
and manipulating and trying.
And
to
we're
get
not just talking
their way.
about
That's right.
we're not talking about just the younger people that go to the prom. We're talking about older people that go to clubs and get out there and do these type things. And
If you were
it's
to,
just,
I mean, you just think about it. If you were to take away the sexual tension, you know, what would be the draw? I mean, you know, I think that's the main draw of
I
it.
think it is, too.
I think that's the main reason behind it. I think that's the motive behind it. It's the feeling, the emotions, and what goes on in the mind. It's
I sort of like what Don Blackwell did in his moral issues on dancing. How he said, if there is really nothing sexual about the prom and all this other stuff, let's have a father-son dance. Guess what?
nobody would come.
nobody's going to
would
show up
come.
to
Okay,
a father-son
what about
dance.
this? Let's go ahead and have the women over here in one room and the men over here in another room, and let's do that.
Well,
There
that's,
would be nobody that would stay.
no, there's nobody going to show up for those type dances because, like Eric said, the motivation is
Exactly.
would
That's
be
right.
is not there because the motivation is sex driven. I mean that's
Yeah.
basically what all these songs and this dance that we're talking about self driven. Now I want to say this real quickly. Put in a passage right here to confirm what we're talking about in Galatians 5:19-20, which is called the works of the flesh. Now the works of the flesh are evident, which are adultery, fornication, uncleanliness, lasciviousness. We'll stop right there. Lasciviousness. What does that word mean?
It means indecent bodily movements, wantonness,
Right.
those type of
It's
things.
lewdness. It's lustful. It's really desire. It's it has a lot of connotations with it and carries a lot of things. But that definition, that word defines our modern day dance.
It sure,
That's
it
exactly
surely
what it is.
does.
It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. But whenever you're going down through here, just to show that these are sinful, that if a person does not repent of these things, it will lead to spiritual death. You go on down even further, it says idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousy, all these other things. And he says, and the like. Now notice this in verse 21. Of which I tell you before, just as I told you in time past, that those who do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. So that is
one
an
translation says those
impossibility.
that practice. When you
Exactly.
practice those things, it's not doing them one time and you're done
Exactly.
and you say, I'm not doing that anymore.
Exactly.
That's not what we're saying. We're saying a person who lives, habitually lives and practices these things.
Exactly.
And there's people that's out there practicing this, this
The
dance of sin.
That's right.
really.
And the modern dance
Right.
cannot be done by any person, and not have and it not be lascivious, and it not be considered lewdness,
Right.
and lustful,
And
all of
and
these
having desire.
That's right, and all these thoughts going through your mind. And we have passages like where Jesus talked about if a man even look at another woman and to lust
Matthew
after her,
5:28.
that's right, in his heart he's already committed adultery. You know, that's a very serious charge. That's a very serious passage. When we think about that, and when we think about putting ourselves in a position where that's exactly what we're going to do, you know, you're committing sin.
Well, Matthew 18, verses 6 and 7 is talking about if you cause one of these little ones to stumble, setting a sin before them or putting them into a situation. Notice what he says here. It says, but whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he be drowned in the depths of the sea. That right there is a blatant statement. That it might be the case that, you know, maybe the parents don't really understand the whole nature of prom. Right. And they say, well, it's something innocent. You know, it's the last 2 years of my son or daughter's life in high school. Let's just go ahead and let them do it. It's all going to be innocent. It's not innocent at all.
Yeah, you could cause your child to stumble there.
That's right.
Yes, exactly.
And you wouldn't want to do that. You wouldn't want a millstone tied around your neck and thrown into the sea. You don't want to give this license, what you would say, for your children to go out and do something like this.
And it would be equally wrong for them to go and to go to that place and to not dance. We hear,
Right.
you know, I know we hear members of the church say all the time, well, my children's going to go, but they're not going to dance. Well,
Right.
you know, in the book of Proverbs, I believe it is, he talked about not dwelling with the wine bibbers. You know, in other words, you wouldn't go down to the bar and dwell with all the people that are drinking and getting drunk because of what's going on there. It's not a place for a Christian to be. So why then would you allow your children to go down and dwell in lasciviousness, immodesty, and the wickedness of the world, and to participate in the works of the flesh? Why would you allow them to go and indulge in that, even if they're not actually participating in the dance? They're still being exposed to it. They're still watching it. Those thoughts can still enter into their mind, and that shouldn't be allowed, and it shouldn't be tolerated.
Well, whenever you think about it, I think it right now would be a perfect time to explain to the parents and even to the children that are even growing up to that age of wanting to go to prom, really the true nature of it. Friends, just think about this. 86% of teen pregnancies happen at the prom, or maybe even after the prom.
Right after the prom.
This is some of the advice that I found that was given. It says, prom is a big night in itself, and it should not be the reason you choose to have sex. If the idea that everyone else is doing it that night repeats over and over in your head, remember that there are never as many people doing something as you believe there are. In high school, there are less than 1/2 of the students having sex. It says, if you are emotionally, mentally, and physically ready to have sex, and prom night happens to be the night, now notice this, there are no contraceptives that are 100% effective against pregnancy. Now notice this. Each year, 820,000 teenage girls get pregnant. So what type of advice is that sort of saying? It's all right, just think about this, it's all right if it just happens to be the night on prom that you go ahead and you commit fornication, go ahead and sleep with one another. It's all right. Just remember, there's 820,000 teenage girls that get pregnant. You're just going to be another one of them. That's fine.
Right. It's amazing that percentage. You know, you wouldn't think it would be that high. But see, they're giving, this is a worldly view. This is a world view. This is not the religious view. This is not the way God looks upon this matter.
And the parents, they just need to be firm.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're a Christian parent, you just need to be firm and set your foot down and say, son, you're not going.
Well, a lot of times the parent's not running the home.
That's
Sometimes
right.
the child is running
That's
the
right.
home. Or
And
the young adult.
That plays a big. That's right. And they don't need to be. They don't need to be fooled into thinking that going to the prom is just something that's innocent and their children's not going to be involved in anything, and oh, they're not going to dance, they're not going to do this or that. Listen, there are too many things to tell us otherwise. There are biblical principles that tells us that it's wrong and that they shouldn't go and they shouldn't participate. And I would submit that if we had strong leadership in the church and we had elders that would stand up and tell the congregation, look, any person that's going to go to the prom, we're going to go through the process of discipline with you. And if we would have men that would stand up and would do things like that, we might not have the problem that we have.
We need to teach on it.
That's right. We need
And
to
after we
teach on it.
teach on it, we need to implement it.
That's
and then
right.
that would be the ultimate end of the implementation of it.
But
Right.
but just tell the audience just a little bit further of other things that goes on. Not only sex. It says there are underage drinking going on. There's a whole lot of drug use going on. There's promiscuity and unprotected sex. There's also impaired driving. If you let your child go to prom, which I'm guilty of it, I went whenever I was in high school.
I went when I was in high school.
Now, just think about this. Just the things in which we ourselves encountered, the things which we saw, the things in which we saw our friends doing, the things in which we saw just the other kids doing. It's nowhere in which I want ever my child to go.
That's right.
I have two daughters,
Yeah.
and I have to think about them. And the Lord tells, not because I think it's wrong, because the Lord says right here that this type of behavior is wrong,
Yeah.
and we can't give in to
We're
it.
not living in the 1920s anymore.
Right.
We're living in a modern society that's just as wicked and evil and as immoral as it ever has been.
And think about this too. It says besides the risky behaviors listed above, it says teenagers may encounter other problems that are sometimes beyond their control. For instance, without adult guidance, teenagers may be at an increased risk of becoming victims of crimes such as theft, violence, injury, and yes, even rape.
Right. 1 Timothy there, he tells us, 1 Timothy 4 and verse 12 says, let no man despise your youth, but be an
example.
Be an example to the believers in the Word, conduct, in love, in spirit, in faith, and purity. And then Philippians 4:8, great passage. This is what we ought to think on. This is where we ought to direct our children to think on. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are noble, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praiseworthy, think on these things.
You've got to have a pure mind.
Absolutely.
But
and
guys,
you can in modern dance.
Our time's already come and gone again. And the guys, I just want to say thank you all for being on the program with me. But I believe that we have shown, friends, how dancing itself, the Bible says that if it is after a lustful type dance, if it is something that brings about wantonness from the individuals, it explicitly states that it is sin.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And so as we look at this problem and all these other different problems, it might be the case you might have any type of questions or maybe concerns in which you want to address us with. If that be the case, why don't you write us at questions@shieldoffaithtv.com. Go to our website, shieldoffaithtv.com. And until next time, friends, may God bless. And just think about it.